Hello everyone, it's Sylvia from Filataro. Welcome to my channel and welcome to today's March favorite pairings video. We're going to have a look at a few new decks, and I believe a couple of them have not been released yet because I did buy them at the Mind, Body, Spirit Festival here in Sydney, where Rockpool Publishing was selling these decks before they actually were released, at least in Australia. I don't know whether they have been already released in the US, perhaps, but in any case, they're pretty new. I haven't seen them around on social media or on YouTube, so it will be fun. Okay, so the first deck we're going to have a look at is the Deadly Apothecary Oracle by the Priestess Moon, Poisonous Plants as Guides and Healers, a Rockpool release. This is not a new deck. I think it's been released probably a few weeks ago, let's say probably a month ago. This is a very interesting deck, and if you follow my video of my unboxing after the Mind, Body, Spirit Festival, you will know that I was kind of confused at first. I actually thought that we were going to look at archetypes, which is true. These are basically archetypes related to plants, but they're all of them, they're poisonous plants, or let's say some essences coming from the plant, some ingredients coming from the plants can be poisonous and actually deadly. So what I saw, what I was intrigued by, was the guidebook, and this is it. So when you look at the cards, for example, so let's take number 13, which is this one here, Thorn Apple. 13, we got 16, 14, 13. It's a really well done guidebook, by the way. It's got the name of, obviously, the title of the card. It's got the sentence that is also at the bottom of the card, embrace your weakness. And then it's got the small full color thumbprint of the card, the botanical name in Latin, the energy, unique, powerful, and hallucinogenic. Other names, Datura, Devil's Trumpet, Jimson Weed. Traditional medicinal use in some folk remedies, ointment of thorn apple was used topically to alleviate inflammation of all kinds. But it also gives you the magical historical uses. So in ancient times, priestesses and oracles ingested the plant to help aid their prophetic visions. So obviously, being a hallucinogenic, they were using that to have these visions. Its striking appearance is unmistakable and cannot be confused with others. I don't particularly know this plant, but I trust what they say. They probably know more than me. So when you see here the poison and the antidote, so what we're looking at is indeed archetypes, but we're looking at the poison first. So it's almost as if we were referring to an archetype that in tarot terms we will actually think of as reversed. So think about the way, or one of the many ways in which you read a reversal, if you do read reversals, and apply that to an archetype. So obviously there is some kind of obstacle, some kind of neglect, some kind of negation. Sometimes is the opposite of the card itself, the upright meaning. Sometimes it's a delay, sometimes there's obstacles, and so on and so forth. In any case, when we look at the archetype, then we think about a reversal of that specific archetype, and that's poison. And then we're looking at a way to flip the card upright and make it so that those delays or negation or opposition to the card were actually disappearing and showing us the archetype in its upright meaning. So when it comes to the thorn apple, we've got as a poison, thorn apple stands out from the crowd and is very self-conscious about it. Their appearance is unusual in some way, and they tend to address drably, so they don't draw attention. They have distinctive ideas and ways of dealing with life that others just don't appreciate and often feel misunderstood. They would love to express themselves more creatively through dress and fashion, but are worried that will be ridiculed further. So obviously it's talking about an archetype, it's talking about a person. This person is going through something, they are not seen, they don't feel heard, and as a matter of fact they're actually even trying to fade in the background because they're not comfortable with who they are. So let's look at the antidote. Thorn apple was never meant to blend in. Their soul purposely chose to be a peacock in this lifetime. Once they embrace this and start expressing themselves fully, then, in time, they will realize their unique take on life will bring joy to themselves and others. So, as you can see, it is, as I was mentioning before, you do have an archetype that is in its poisonous state or shadowy state, and then you look at the antidote in order to be able to understand how to, well, cure this condition. As such, this is quite a unique deck. Of course, we have decks that talk about the shadow side and the light side, of course, but I think that referring them back to plants and treating them as if they were, you know, the poison on the one hand and the antidote on the other hand, it's actually quite interesting. And so that's why I thought that this month I would just, you know, focus on a few oracle decks, and this is definitely one of them when it comes to my favorite pairing. But without much further ado, we got the thorn apple here, so let's have a look at what decks, tarot decks in this case, I have tried to pair up with the Deadly Apothecary Oracle. And the first one that came to mind because of aesthetics merely is the Tarot of the Drowning World. And this deck is an absolute joy. It's a very interesting deck. The concept is fantastic. So I actually followed up on how the creators were producing this deck. And on Instagram it's very easy because they were sharing everything, and basically you were looking at the progress, the work in progress when they were doing the photo shoot. And it was very interesting. So they were in a kind of a swamp, but it could have been a garden, but in any case it was, you know, there was this kind of swamp, lake or pond or however you want to call it. And they were putting objects in the water and then taking photos, and sometimes in order to contain the objects they were actually putting some kind of a shape like a bathtub on the water, filling it with water, and then, you know, putting the objects inside so that whilst they were preparing to take the photo, you know, everything would just swim away. And that was really, really interesting to watch, to you know, follow up on being developed on Instagram. Generally speaking, I kind of had to take a break from Instagram, although I'm slowly coming back because there were so many problems with algorithms not working, people being in the Instagram sin bin for just sending messages, which was absolutely ridiculous. And it was due to the fact that they put a number of keywords in the algorithm that were triggering them and blocking the person temporarily, automatically, without any human being actually checking whether that comment was indeed going against the guidelines or not. And I think that it went on for so long. Now I think it's getting a little bit better, but it went on for so long that I kind of got fed up, because I have been learning how to code in SQL Server, and I can assure you 1000% something like that is very easy to repair. A mistake like that, it's easy to make a mistake and it's fine, okay, but it's easy to repair. And there were so many of us bringing that to the attention of Instagram, and they never did anything for months. And I think that that's absolutely terrible. When you're dealing with social media, everything is live, everything is at the same time, and algorithms do that in the same way, so everything is applied live. So I don't understand why it took them 4 months to correct something that simple to correct. I really can assure you it's just a simple matter of going into the code and removing the word. I think that the triggering word was the word message. But in any case, I mean, I think they finally solved that issue, so I'm slowly going back into Instagram. But what I do like is when I'm on Instagram, I actually really appreciate following all the oh, I never noticed that there are cards in there, and it's the carnival at the end of the world. How amazing. Yeah, because it's the same team of creators, as you can see. I don't know if you can see, but this is definitely the cards from the carnival at the end of the world tarot deck. And so I was saying, I really enjoy following creators, you know, and see their baby grow up. It's really amazing, and that's how I end up knowing about decks. So I think this is a winner. I'm sorry about that. I wasn't particularly paying attention. I was really, you know, going into my crusade on Instagram. But it is aesthetically very pleasing. I think that it comes from the fact that they share a black background. And also there's a lot of botanical elements in both decks. I did try and do a couple of readings, but not for a long time. And to be honest, I was so very excited about another deck that I will show you later that at that point I wasn't really paying attention and I couldn't really feel the vibe. But in any case, so I think this is a really good pairing. And so this is still the Deadly Apothecary Oracle, and I paired it up with the Tarot of the Drowning World. Okay, so I'm just gonna try something now because, and this is a bit of an improvisation, because I feel that the Lost Tarot shares a lot of the aesthetics of the Tarot of the Drowning World, including the setup, and including with a little arch at the top, and including also the distressed look of the cards and the botanical elements present in the cards. So it might actually work out, I'm not entirely sure, but sometimes in these videos I like to go with the flow, in the sense that I do have most of my decks planned, but sometimes, you know, I do get new ideas while I'm actually looking at the cards, and so I like to go with it and see if it works or not. I think it definitely does. I mean, if you look at the not just the expression, but actually the makeup on both these characters, it's very, very similar. And I like that they chose the mask of the Santa Muerte to depict the High Priestess. With my members, I'm actually doing a Read Like a Pro kind of course, and we are looking into constellations and clusters throughout the archetypes of the major arcanas, and we've just done the High Priestess, and it's very interesting to see that the High Priestess, you know, finds balance. And here is where numerology comes in hand, because obviously you look at the number of the Priestess is number 2, and obviously in the number 2 in the cluster we've got also number 11, because 1 and 1 is 2, and number 20 because 2 and 0 is 2. So we've got Justice, and we've got also the Judgment card. And so it's very interesting to notice that the High Priestess finds balance by understanding, thanks to Justice and Judgment. So the concept says that, you know, wisdom is achieved in the High Priestess, but only through the balance, finding the balance between logic and intuition, because intuition by itself can easily be led astray. And, you know, logic by itself is also very, very dangerous, obviously. And, you know, when you look at the real world, the world around us, we also understand that, because logic is reflected in social laws, so public laws. But it's also interesting to see that public laws also need to find the balance. But the public laws need to find the balance as well, because they need to find the logic, you know, the logic and the intuition, in order not to hurt the personal self. And so to me, it's the very long divide, very long-standing divide between you know, moral and lawful, what's moral and what's lawful or legal, let's say. Because I have the feeling that these two don't pair up as well as the Tarot of the Drowning World, but there is still this sense of, especially when there's a character in the Lost Tarot, and the card of the Lost Tarot, a single character which is obviously creating some kind of a bridge between the tarot card and the oracle card, because that's the way in which this oracle card is set up. And so in this case, we do have that, you know, we do have these kind of correspondences between the characters in the tarot deck. In here we got the Snowdrop with Go with the Flow, and the Emperor and the Four of Coins. And that is there's a lesson right there, because when we look at the Four of Coins, we also look at a person that is trying to keep everything within a certain control of that they have within their own hands, specifically or visually, but it's also metaphorical, so they keep their own family. If you don't want necessarily to focus on finances, even though it is quite clear that it is referring to that, but you can also see that referring to your family, close friends, close resources, you know, everything within your control, because you're scared of losing that. But that is, you know, the numerology comes at hand as well, because it tells us that is the card of consolidation. So once you pair consolidation up with the alchemical element of earth, which is the suit of coins, you have two very strong, very heavy elements that can lead from consolidation into stagnation, which is very important to notice and really hard to avoid at a certain point. So the Go with the Flow can actually signify moving on from the authoritative figure of the Emperor that really brings things back into his own control after the chaos. He represents the order, basically. That is the positive action. So that could be seen as the antidote, because this is the poison. So the poison is moving from consolidation into stagnation. How do you do that? How do you reverse that? You go with the flow and you accept that there is a logic to the order, but there's also intuition, as in letting it go sometimes. I like how this deck is working. I like the fact that now that I know how it works between poison and antidote, is literally beckoning, you know, and literally telling me and suggesting me how to read the cards. And perhaps, you know, one of the cards at the Four of Swords could be again the antidote, the poison, and the Moon card could be the antidote. And you can look at gossip and kindness. So gossip, or quite the opposite perhaps, gossip is what happens in the shadow, what happens behind your back. And that is, in some cases, the energy of the moon. But kindness is letting yourself rest, and perhaps taking a step back from all of the gossip because you're exhausted. Really, really enjoy these two together. Perhaps not the best pair, as I was saying earlier, when it comes to visual and aesthetics. But then again, you do have some echoes and resonances here and there, and I really like it. So this was, again, the Deadly Apothecary Oracle, and I paired it up with the Lost Tarot. But this deck, the next deck that I'm going to show you, was the deck I was talking earlier about, that I was really, really excited to try and pair up with this deck, and it's the Gothmancy deck. So this is the, let's say, gold edition, I think it's called, because the foil on the box is gold. I think there's a silver one as well. This is from 2020, Stephanie Alia. I have to say, this deck, I had mixed feeling. I had the silver edition, and the box, the tag box, was really hard to open. I got it damaged, and then, you know, I couldn't even close it anymore, and for some reason that felt really like an unsatisfying, troubling experience. And at that point, I didn't feel like using the deck, and so it was just gathering dust on the shelf. And at a certain point, I just decided to rehome it, because it's the best thing to do when you're not showing, you're not honoring a deck. You just move it to somebody else that is going to love it. But then I heard about that the gold edition was better and all the rest was pretty much the same. So I recently got it and I'm so very happy that I did, because this deck is superb. And I have to say, I thought it would pair up really well with the Deadly Apothecary, and I think I'm right, because I can see already there's these echoes of the color palette, but also the art style is not much dissimilar. And yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I have to say the cardstock of the Gothmancy is fantastic. The tactile feel is really worth it. You know, if you have any doubts about this deck, obviously you're probably seen it already. We got Boy George and what looks like David Bowie. I'm not entirely sure, but it looks like David Bowie for the star card, which is an absolute joy. I need to go back to the guidebook and see whether it is truly him, but one of the reasons why I got this deck back was Eric Draven from The Crow, because it was one of my favorite movies. Not when it came out, because I think I was too little to go watch it. I think it was probably I don't know, like 14 years old minimum, and I wasn't 14. So but maybe, I don't remember. In any case, I didn't watch it at the cinema, unfortunately, back then. And I'm so very happy to say, if you're in Sydney, Australia, there's a movie theatre which is called the Orpheum in Crow's Nest, which is actually showing The Crow, the original one, on the 21st of March. So very close, very close. And I'm so very excited about it. So these two together, they share a lot. Let me tell you, I'm sitting here flipping the cards and it's almost as if they were actually vibrating. So what I like to do when I do these kind of pairings, I also like to give my interpretation of the cards, because I believe that it's not something that I do just on my channel. I actually use this in many different sides of my practice, of my tarot practice. So sometimes I also use it for divination, sometimes I use it for meditation, sometimes I use it for you know, some kind of work that I'm doing on myself, whether it's shadow work or inner child, healing the inner child one, because you know, you never stop doing that actually. And I can assure you, okay, so let's have a look. So as I was saying before, it's really nice to notice that the Deadly Apothecary Oracle can actually be read as two, you know, sides of the same coin, or at least two sides of the same archetype. So what we got here, we got a caster being with Release the Past. So if I do this, you know, properly, I'm just going to have a look at the guidebook, what that guidebook says, because I'm not entirely familiar with this deck yet. So I'm just going to go to C number 31, and then we're just going to have a look at how it pairs up with the tarot deck. So the person says, caster being obsesses over the past, okay, focusing on how things used to be, instead of concentrating on the here and now. Prone to wistfulness, I believe that things were better back then, remember only the good times, and have a tendency to hoard physical items. They often put past lovers on a pedestal. This behavior causes pain for their current and future partners, who believe that if only they exhibited the same qualities Caster Bean will love them more. Aww. Caster is beholden to the long ago. Absolutely. Do you see the hangman here? The suspension? The hangman that see things in a different way, and that perspective is not corresponding to how things actually are. So the hangman for me is an ambivalent kind of card, in the sense that sometimes this different perspective helps you to look at things in a different way and understand them better, but some other times it's just giving you a distorted view of reality, which is upside down. So I really believe this is referring to the poison of the caster bean. So being stuck in the past and thinking that the past was so much better than the present because you are looking at the past through a distorted perspective, remembering just the good things. And so what is the antidote to that? The Nine of Cups. So the antidote says it is draining being in a relationship with an emotionally unavailable person whose head is stuck in bygone days. It's not anyone's sole responsibility to make someone happy, especially those infatuated with the ghosts of the past. Cast being obsessing about what could or might have been has become a life stealer, and they need to release the past. The universe works in mysterious ways, and if Castor Bean was truly meant to be with someone, they would be. There can be no other way. That's amazing, because I was talking about the Liberation Tarot a couple of days ago for a video. I don't remember which video it was. I do release 3 videos for the public every week and another 2 and sometimes 3 for my members. So I'm filming so many videos at this time that I kind of don't remember what I said in which video. In any case, I was talking about the Liberation Tarot. I think it was a VR that I was doing. And in this case, I was looking at the Nine of Cups and the particular take of the Liberation Tarot on the Nine of Cups. The Nine of Cups, generally speaking, is a wish come true, but in the Nine of Cups, it actually tells you that sometimes you need to be careful what you wish for. Sometimes you become isolated. And this is not the case in this Nine of Cups, I believe, because generally speaking, the symbolism sees or shows you an alone person drinking from a cup and having, you know, another 8 cups around him. And that in itself, I believe it actually contains partly what the antidote to the Castor Bean might be. So in order to release the past, you also have to do so by projecting yourself into the future, and the future of the Nine of Cups is a community. So when you already see community, as in friends or family, or, you know, someone celebrating the wish come true around you, you've already applied the antidote to the Castor Bean, because you are already accepting that the present time perhaps is not as good as the past, but is, you know, it is an experience that needs to be lived to its fullest. And so I can see that how these two actually work together in this, you know, poison and antidote of the archetype. Really, really enjoying these two. Let's just have a look at another couple of cards. The Queen of Cups is absolutely adorable, divine. So hollow, allow wealth with the Queen of Cups and the Ace of Cups. Absolutely. So wealth is not just a wealth, material wealth. It's the wealth of feelings and the wealth of, you know, the fullness of your life. And so the Ace of Cups definitely gives you the possibility to do so, but perhaps it's just the beginning. Whereas the Queen of Cups has been mastering that fullness of her or their feelings. Really enjoying these two together. I think that I probably prefer this one even more to the Tarot of the Drowning World, because it feels almost as if the meaning is even stronger within these two. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. We're quickly going to have a look at another couple of oracle decks, but I would love to hear your opinion about which one of these 3 tarot decks pair up best with the Deadly Apothecary Oracle. Let's have a look at the other 2 oracles that I've got for today. Okay, so the next oracle deck we're going to have a look at is one of my very, very favorite oracle decks for the month of March. This is the Oracle Magicus by Iris Elinac. And Iris actually reached out to me on Instagram a couple of months ago saying, you know, she wanted to send me a deck. And so I was in Europe and she was able to send it to me while I was in Europe. And she's based in France, by the way. The last time I talked about this deck on the channel, I've seen a couple of you have been asking. So this is an indie deck. And I always make sure to put both Iris's website and her Etsy shop in the links in the description box below. But a few of you noticed that there is a, I think it's called the Botanique, Oracle Botanique or something like that, on Amazon, and it looks like it's a legit copy. I saw a couple of you actually asked her, but she may not have noticed the comment. So I've actually had a confirmation from Marine from the Waves of Your Soul that that oracle deck that is on Amazon right now by Iris Elinak is actually legitimate. It is a legitimate, you know, oracle deck, and so if you like it, you can obviously get a copy. It's not, I feel that these days we really need to specify these things, because I used to think that Amazon would never sell a fake deck, but they do. Oh my goodness, of course they do. And so, you know, we're surrounded by fake decks. And I have to say, for once, it's actually a legitimate one, and you can, you know, if you like it and you had some doubts about it, I know that at least 2 of you actually reached out to ask if it was a legitimate deck or not. So this is a an indie deck, and it's not available on Amazon. If you find it on Amazon, please reach out to Iris and let her know, because that would definitely be a copy, unless she decides to put it there. That would be a different thing, obviously. I really enjoy working with this deck, and this month I've done a lot of work. I have to say, I really enjoy the fact that we've got, well, first of all, it's aesthetically really beautiful, so I like this type of antique or vintage feel collage. But I also really appreciate the choice when it comes to the characters that we have on the cards, because as always, this gives you the possibility to do a lot of research on your own. These are all, very interesting characters. We got the Baba Yaga, of course. We couldn't miss her. And so it's very interesting to have a look at their lives, whether they are historical or not, or the legends that, can be found when you Google them, basically. So it's a very interesting deck when it comes to the meaning, but it's also a really beautiful deck when, for example, you pair it up with a tarot deck. So that's why I really wanted to talk about this deck, because looking at the characters here on these cards, let me just give it a quick shuffle. So when you look at the cards and the characters on the cards, it just reminded me so much of one of my all-time favorite tarot decks, and you probably guessed which one it is. And if you guessed the Magician, Martyrs and Madmen, you were right, because it is indeed this one. This deck, ever since I got it, to be honest with you, I did not expect to like it so much. It's just really, really interesting. I'm doing so much work with this one these days, because it really gives me the satisfaction of learning about the characters in, depicted in the stories here. Let me just give it a shuffle as well. Okay, so what I do with these 2 decks together, they work really, really well when you actually focus on the characters. So obviously you also need to do a little bit of research, let's say. But finding that, for example, the Magician, Martyrs and Madmen is based on curated art. Well, it's a bit of a mix, really, because there's curated art, but there's also some kind of a reworking on it. Whereas this one obviously is a photographic collage deck. So from an aesthetic point of view, you wouldn't think that it actually works, but it really does. So partly because we're looking at the same period of time, or something that, let's say, looks similar. So when you look at, for example, the images and the clothes that the characters are wearing, it feels almost as if we're looking at the same kind of environment, the same kind of era, let's put it this way. But there is so much that corresponds. So when, for example, you see all of the geometric elements and symbols in the Oracle Magicus, and you do find echoes of that, in this case, in the Seven of Pentacles and the Three of Pentacles. So I call these are resonances for me, because it's when two decks pair up really well with each other, and they just start the work even without you. You just, literally, the card slinger. You are turning and flipping the cards. You are enabling these two to have a conversation together. And sometimes it almost feels as if you were able to step outside and just observe, you know, what is going on. And I kid you not, by using them like this many times, I've actually found there's a few characters that are present in both decks. For example, Rasputin is. And so it would have happened, not particularly with Rasputin, but with Marie Laveau, for example. It actually happened that I found, you know, I was flipping the cards and there was, you know, Marie Laveau in both of the decks. And that's a really interesting thing. And when that happens, obviously, I am invited to understand why that is happening. And is there a meaning to that? And what could that meaning be? And so I really like it when these things happen. It's something very, you know, it's almost as if it were serendipity. You know, it's meant to be. It's meant to attract my attention to something that is very important for me to understand. Perhaps it's a message. The cards are giving me a message, and my duty is to listen and to convert the message in such a way that, you know, I relay back to the person I'm reading for, obviously when I'm reading for someone else, but also when I'm reading for myself. So these two are really interesting together. You can definitely feel how much there is in common between the two decks. But let's have a look, because in this case I feel that the commonalities are mostly referring to meaning of the cards. But I wanted to show you a pairing or a couple of pairings that really blew my mind. So let's put these cards at the back. So we have a good pile. So many of you will remember the video in which I was showing this deck, and I paired that up with the Rosebud Tarot, and back then it was indeed my favorite pairing. It is still one of my favorite pairings, but the next deck that I'm going to pair it with actually has become lately my favorite, because it is really, when it comes to the aesthetics, I mean, obviously there's different ways in which to determine whether I like a pairing or not. So aesthetics is probably one of the first things that I look at. And in this case, it's a symphony. It's a symphony played by an orchestra. And it's a symphony that looks at the cards and finds so many similarities, from the collage style, the photographic collage style, to the fact that the images are vintage looking, to the fact that, you know, the characters are in black and white or a scale of gray, to the fact that there are here and there some splashes of colors that sometimes, you know, they are shared by both the decks. And so I really enjoy pairing these two up, because it's one of those things that really gets you in the mood of listening to the message. So you need to understand that when you do this, you know, when reading tarot is your profession, for example, you always have sick days, you know, you always have bad hair days, you always have off days. But we need to keep on reading, we need to give the message, we need to keep on understanding what we're doing. So it's more or less the same as going to your office job and, you know, needing to be there with your mind and focusing. And sometimes I find that, you know, for example, in order to do so in an office, you might probably drink a coffee because it helps you clear your mind and everything. When it comes to the cards, for me, it helps a lot when two decks do like 90% of the job by themselves, and then they're just waiting for me to catch up to them and understand what it is that they were saying, what it is that they need to tell me. So this is an incredibly beautiful pair. I really enjoyed using these two together, and it's almost, you know, it's almost as if they were made for each other. But you will see what I mean when I say that the next one is even better. So let's have a look at the next tarot deck that I want to pair up with the Oracle Magicus. And let me just put these cards at the bottom here. And so again, please let me know in the comments below which one you like. So this one is now my favorite. It's the Night Wait Tarot deck. So I just want to bring the attention to the fact that the creator is called Michelle Nightwait. So because at the beginning, for the tarot community, we sometimes feel that, you know, creators may be going a bit too far, and calling a deck Nightwait felt like it was a bit presumptuous, and it was completely wrong or misplaced, because this is the actual name of the person, of the creator. So I think her wife's name is Wait and her own name is Night. So it feels like it was a match made in heaven. Now, when we look at these two, you know, at the one thing that comes to mind is that there is a perfect synchronicity between these two. And the perfect synchronicity comes from the fact that even though we do have a little bit more color in this deck than we see, for example, in the Rosebud Tarot, or that we definitely see in the Oracle Magicus, on the other hand, when you look at the cards and you read them together, everything falls into the right place. So for example, we got Gerald Gardner with creativity, and it's between the Eight of Swords and death. And I love that, because creativity, innovation, there is that way in which you can actually find a way out of that cage of your own making, that is the Eight of Swords. But that innovation, that creativity cannot be without transformation. So this is just an example of a quick reading, but I could stay here the whole day. So La Befana, which is, you know, a witch coming on the 6th of January in the Italian tradition. And it talks about generosity, sharing, and altruism between the Nine of Swords and the Ace of Pentacles. And this is, to me, that looking at this card and being the antidote, like we've seen before, like looking at the Nine of Swords and that kind of sense of anxiety for, you know, that wakes you up at 3 a.m. because you're scared about something you don't even necessarily understand. But a way to use the Ace of Pentacles to prevent the anxiety of the Nine of Swords is indeed to just focus on being generous and to share everything. So sharing is obviously creating that meaningful bond, that meaningful relationship that helps us through the darkest times. So, and you know, this is one of the reasons why I love doing this kind of exercise of pairing up tarot and oracle decks. Sometimes 2 oracle decks together, sometimes 2 tarot decks together, sometimes even 3 decks together. It depends on what it feels like. It depends on the decks as well. But the reason why I love this so much is because it really gives you, on the one hand, a different layer of knowledge or interpretation also on the tarot cards, because you see them through the lens of the oracle. But it's also giving the oracle a possibility to take on different phases or different aspects, or for you to focus on different aspects, because you pair it up with other decks, more than one. And so one deck will ask you to pay more attention to one aspect of the oracle, another deck will just, you know, make sure that something else is in focus, etc. So excess, folly, and the ride with Simone Lemage. And we got the 6 of Pentacles and the 9 of Wands, and you can definitely feel that sense of being exhausted, getting there barely, you know, through so many obstacles, and even knowing at the 9 of Wands that you're not even at the end yet. And so there is this sense of having spent too much energy in a non-sensitive way. And that's definitely something that comes from the excess and the folly of the oracle card, and perhaps sharing the burden with the 6 of Pentacles. If you look at the 6 of Pentacles from a numerological point of view, there is this sense of movement. that, you know, the movement grounded by the suit of the earth that, you know, brings things back. So I really love the way in which these two are giving me this opportunity, the opportunity of dig deeper into my knowledge of alchemy, you know, occultism, metaphysical matters, and the craft in general. So it's very, very interesting. As always, please let me know in the comments below which ones of the three do you prefer in this pairing with the Oracle Magicus. But the next oracle deck that I want to show you paired up with 3 tarot decks is actually a yet to be released deck by Rockpool. It's an oracle and it's called the Resurrection Oracle, Welcome to Your Life. It's by Jenna della Grottaglia, very prolific author. I've been publishing a lot with Rockpool Publishing. This is indeed one of the deluxe oracle decks, that's what they call them. So it's got a slightly bigger box, obviously, and it opens up like a book. Now I've already taken the cards out, but it's got a really interesting guidebook as well. Again, if you want to see this, I've done a really big unboxing video in my Mind, Body, Spirit video when I went to the festival. And you know, these are just second impressions, let's say. That unboxing video was showing my first impressions on a couple of yet to be released decks. This one, however, has quickly become one of my favorites because of the concept. So first of all, let me just spare a couple of words about the word resurrection. So resurrection is a very, how should I say this, hairy concept, because resurrection as a concept, so let's talk about resurrecting from death, is a concept that is common to many different cultures and also many different religions. Whether we think that we may resurrect or come back to life in this lifetime, or like in Buddhism, for example, we talk about reincarnation, or we think that at the end of the days, you know, when we look at the judgment day, then we will come back and there will be a resurrection. Or if we are Catholic or Christian, we believe in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. But that's what I think that it's the most commonly known ones, but the concept of resurrection is common and it's present in other cultures as well, in other religions as well. We talk about resurrection or forms of resurrection when we look at voodoo, for example, or Santeria, when we look at forms of animism. For example, I was in Flores. Flores is a tiny island which used to be very famous because of Komodo dragons. So it's a tiny island in Indonesia, and it's east from Bali, just to give you a geographic, more or less geographic positioning. It used to be famous because the Komodo Island and the Komodo, let's say, Marine Park used to be open to tourists. I was there in 2019, which was the last year in which it was actually open to tourists. Now I believe you can only go to a couple of, let's say, islands which are further from the actual Komodo area. And the reason is about that there were a lot of accidents happening. I can tell you, the week I was there, one Japanese tourist had been bitten by a Komodo dragon and he died because there are so many bacteria on the saliva of Komodo dragons that when they bite you and they break the skin and the bacteria go into the bloodstream, they provoke septicemia, and septicemia can kill you in 45 minutes. This guy, unfortunately, died in less than 2 hours. It was a tragedy, obviously, and because of that, we were allowed to go and see the Komodo dragons, but we were under strict surveillance, obviously, because they didn't want people to be stupid. Not that that guy had been stupid, it was an accident, it was tragic, obviously. But going back to the Oracle deck, sorry, I do like my going off on a tangent, don't I? In any case, resurrection is a very strong concept for me. And both because I come from a Catholic culture, even though I'm not religious anymore, but also because I have been studying Buddhism in order to understand the concept of samsara and the continuous cycle of life and death. And I believe that this deck is definitely taking you into a journey that sees you going through a very strong transformation of the self in order to be able to accept the dying of the self, the death of the self, for you to be more attuned, more, you know, aware of the possibility of being reborn, and so resurrection. So I really enjoyed this deck. At the beginning, I didn't really understand the concept because some of the cards were not necessarily straightforward. Like, for example, this one says the coupling, but it actually refers back to mutual respect. So it takes two to tango. So it looks at aspects of your life that belong to, you know, to the life of everyone. And then it looks also at that stage of life into your life where you go through this. And it sees how it's all part of the same picture, of a bigger picture that is, you know, taking you down the road and taking you to the moment in which you transform yourself and you are reborn. So as you can understand, for me, this is a very intriguing, very interesting concept. And so, you know, I was going through the deck, and by the way, let's have a look. And I was going through the deck and I was thinking about pairings, and I tried out a few of them, and it's very interesting. But again, it's there is the use of AI in this deck. However, it is so nowadays I feel that we've come to the stage in which we need to make a distinction between AI being used to, from square one, let's say, to actually produce the art, to the point in which AI is actually used to correct something that has already been produced. So if the artist starts with their own ideas, they put them into whatever their medium is. So it could be canvas, it could be photo, it could be, you know, computer generated art, as in generated by yourself through the computer. Oh, we need to be very careful about what we say and how we say things these days. In any case, that, you know, and then you use AI to correct some things, because AI can actually be used like that. I'm not entirely convinced that it is properly done, and I'm not entirely convinced that it is properly regulated as yet. So I think the jury is still out for me when it comes to appreciating or not. But in the meantime, what I can do is appreciate the effect that the images and this particular oracle deck has on me, because I feel that in this case, this is an AI that is recognizable by my brain. So there is AI that is too weird in the sense that, you know, your brain doesn't recognize it as something that has been produced by a human. And so that kind of AI throws me off, but this one doesn't. So it's actually, let's put it this way, I appreciate it, I can appreciate it. I don't like that there's only 36 cards in the deck, because I do believe that we've been talking about, you know, a minimum of 44 cards for so many years already, that the latest decks should not be 32 or 36. 32 is even worse, that's Los Carabeo. Anyway, let me just quickly shuffle this one, because I have put it back in order, because there is an order to the cards, in the sense that it does start from the infancy of a lifetime, and then it goes through all of the phases of your life, and then it talks about, you know, new phases after resurrection. So it is kind of interesting as a concept. Okay, so okay, so we start again from the arrival. So the arrival is the first born, the first birth, let's put it this way. But sorry, I forgot to say, I'm actually paired it up with this fantastic deck, which is the Mystic Palette Tarot by Ciro Marchetti. This is the muted edition. I love it so much. I just really, really enjoy this one. And this is the indie edition. I have to say, I'm so very happy that I splurge on the muted edition, sorry, on the indie edition, because it's absolutely worth it. The cardstock is phenomenal, and you know, the box is fantastic. It's one of those magnetic closure wraparound kind of box. It's got a really beautiful, this is the Magician inside, so I really love this deck. I feel that these two are complementary, because Chiro's deck is really pointing out, you know, it's creating some kind of cadence or rhythm by itself. Sorry, some cards just still sticking to each other, but let's put it back here. Whereas the Oracle deck, as you know, finds and accentuates this rhythm, this cadence. So let's just, because you know, talking about something is never really clear, but let's have a look. Let's look at one example, because I believe that when I explain something, it's not very clear. When I show something, it becomes clear. So we have here your first time, and obviously it's referring back to your first time in a sexual relationship. So obviously there is always that sense of beginning a new adventure. And let me just read what it says for the card. So card number 11, so your first time, and here it says no inhibitions. You'll experience many first times in your life, from intimacy to food to family situations, trying something new, experiencing someone new, visiting someplace new. All this should be exciting, filling you with anticipation and a dash of nerves. You're not always going to like each different experience, nor will any experience be the same. Close your eyes and imagine this first time as a gift, because no matter what, there will never be this first moment again. Surrender to the person, the relationship, the cuisine, the job. Go into it with wonder, even though you don't know exactly what is in store for you. No preconceived ideas and little to no inhibitions. The worst thing that could happen is you don't fully enjoy and appreciate the moment, or perhaps you feel awkward in the situation. At least you can say, I tried honestly and fully. I really appreciate this deck, because it really looks at stuff that happens into our lives that it's kind of difficult to look at sometimes. And we've all been there. We've all had our first time, as the book said, not necessarily in a relationship, but also with food, in a job, with a friend, talking something, doing something new, etc. So the important thing is trying, and I really, really appreciate that. And what I like about this is that there is a sense of acceptance that there can also be a fall, there can also be a loss, there can also be an experience that is not necessarily what we thought it would be. And I like this, which is pairing up with the Five of Cups, because to me the sense of loss of the Five of Cups is a sense of loss that needs to be accepted. If you don't move on from the from the Five of Cups, and you take refuge into the Six of Cups, which shows you memories from the past. Remember, we talked about, you know, being a prisoner of the past because of thinking that everything in the past was better. And you need it sometimes. You need to think about the past to get back some kind of energy. But if you spend too much time in that, it becomes a cage of your own making. So accept that when you do something for the first time, there might be a loss. So accept this kind of loss. And that is the way in which you empower yourself and you become the emperor, in the sense that you bring back the order, you bring back a plan, you strategize, and you can finally move on. So there is this sense, apart from the fact that I believe that aesthetically they're quite pleasing, so I really like using them together. It really feels like, you know, it's not necessarily the same type of art. It's also because Chiro has a very recognizable kind of art style. But if you look at the cards, it feels like they're very, very similar. Obviously, the more in depth you go with the Oracle deck, the more you can talk about the related meaning of the tarot cards, you know, related to the Oracle card that you're looking at. And it depends on you. I feel that this kind of practice is something that everyone should try if you're into tarot, because I believe that it will definitely give you the opportunity to find a new way to enjoy your decks. You know, you look at your decks in a different way, you feel that you can finally find their own space in your practice, or, you know, you rediscover decks that you are not using for a while. I love this. So these two, absolutely love them together. So again, this is the Resurrection Tarot, and I'm sorry, the Resurrection Oracle, and I'm pairing it up with the Mystic Palette Tarot. So I'm very proud to talk about the next deck I'm pairing up with the Resurrection Oracle. And the reason why I'm proud to talk about it is because it is one of those decks that made it to my video, decks I can't pick up. Please help me reconnect with them. I think that I finally found an Oracle deck that pairs up really well with this deck. And I'm talking about the Raincoast Visions Tarot. So this is by Christoph James, and it's the same creator as the Aleister Crowley Tarot, the Raincoast Tarot, and I think there's another tarot deck that is on sale on their website. A thing that I have to say about Christoph James is that, at least the last time that I bought something from them, they do ship to Australia, and guess what? They actually ship for free. So a huge thank you, because not only it's remarkable that you ship to Australia, thank you for that, for including us. But wow, I mean, shipping for free, if that's not a reason to buy more decks from those authors, from Christoph James, I don't know what is. In any case, so I really believe that for some reason, these two really work well with each other. By the way, we keep on seeing Rasputin today. This is the third time that we see Rasputin. There might be something that I need to, you know, I need to find out. I need to dig deeper and see why Rasputin is coming. But do you see what I mean when I say, so for example, we've got the crossing over with the 5 of coins, which is actually showing you the two sides of the coin, literally. So we've got the awareness and the sense of loss, basically. The keywords of the deck are poverty, isolation, and worry. And when we use the Oracle deck saying crossing over, we understand that the way to resolve this kind of conflict, because the energy of the 5 is always in kind of a conflicting energy. So in order to resolve that, we need to look at the Empress and the Empress's nurturing effect and the abundance that they represent. So in this case, I feel that the Oracle deck works really, really well as a bridge between the meaning of the two cards. And I actually really like the aesthetics as well. I love that there's this sense of directionality, of the coming of age, moving forward into the line of life, the lifeline. So we got the 9 of Rods with courage, resilience, and persistence, because it is the 9 of Fire, or 9 of Wands. And then the coming of age, it tells us that when we go through this phase, which is a stage of life, and obviously let's not forget that this Oracle deck is about the stages of life, we cross that border and we cross a line into the next stage. And the next stage necessarily refers back to meditation and contemplation. It could also, because we know that the numerological value or meaning of the 4 can turn from consolidation into stagnation. And that's why you see also the keyword apathy for the 4 of Cups. But I like to think about this from the current and the resilience of the 9 of Wands. You go through this stage of your life and you necessarily reach a state of meditation, because there is a lot of loss of energy with the 9 of Wands, and so you need to recuperate that with the 4 of Cups. Or the dream state, for example, between the Knight of Coins, which is always doubling down on what they're doing. It's almost as if it were an 8 of coins on steroids. That's a knight of coins for you. It's got a cause. They need to go, go, go. They need to produce, 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 and everything. And it's almost as if it were telling you that this has to stop at a certain point. If we were looking at the knight of coins reverse, like in this case, this has to stop. Let's reach that oniric state, that dreamlike state that is producing this kind of transition and change, and especially release with the Six of Swords. So as you can see, it's really interesting to pair these two up together. I like the aesthetics, as I was saying before. There is a lot of possibility to read directionality. And you know, and I'm very happy that I found an oracle deck that actually makes me want to use the Raincast Vision Tarot, because as I was saying, it's one of those decks that I really wasn't able to pick up no matter what, because I just couldn't find its rightful place in my collection. And let's have a look at the last deck that I enjoy pairing up with the Resurrection Oracle. And so a deck that I really didn't think it would work together with the Resurrection Oracle, but it actually does, is the Circle of Doors Tarot. I really, really love these two together, and let me show you why. Because I think that there is the same kind of intent. So obviously, you know that in order for a tarot deck, especially a tarot deck, but also an oracle deck, to be successful, not successful as in selling a lot, but successful as in communicating a message. Let me move Jerry, sorry Jerry, is intent. So there needs to be an express intent of manifestation. You need to have a reason why you want to create a deck. It's not purely just for an aesthetic outlet, let's say. It needs to have an intention, because it is a tool of divination. It's a magical tool, and it's also one of those, let's say, gateway or portals into a dimension that is more mirroring the as above than the so below, or you know, it connects these two. So obviously there needs to be an intention. It's not just art, and you will probably notice this when there is a deck that is say for example really, really beautiful, artistically speaking. It's a work of art. However, you keep it because it's a collectible item, or perhaps because you really, really like the art style, but you don't use it. It's, you know, you don't want one of those decks. Obviously, of course, you can keep it. You can produce, if you're an artist and you want to produce a deck, by all means. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but I'm saying when it needs to be a tarot deck that you need to use, that you're actually using for divination, but also for other practices, it needs to have an intention. It needs to manifest an intention. I believe that these two actually share the same intention. So when we look at this card is very, very powerful, because as you can see, it refers back to the departure. So it's the second to last card. So if we depart this world, is very, it's a very powerful experience. It's part of life, whether you're being you know, going through a phase in which you lost someone and you consider, you have been thinking about what does departing this world mean? How does it feel like? What happens when you lose someone? You go through these kind of things. You wonder what it means to live this world, and it's something very important, because being human is to die. Being human is to being born, but also one day to die. And because we're talking about the Resurrection Oracle, obviously this oracle also gives you the perspective of being born to just finish something in order to be able to start something new. So this is beautiful, because we see it here between the Mother of Keys with teacher and the Five of Keys with struggle. So the departure must be something confusing. It must be something emotionally jarring. It must be something very intense and scary. Very scary, I think. And you can see the struggle here, the Five of Keys. There's definitely struggle in this departure. So perhaps we need to look at the Mother of Keys, which is a teacher, which is just sharing all of the experiences of the earth and making us feel that we are in good hands because we are protected. And this is the kind, by the way, this is the kind of reading that you can expect from these two decks together. So they are quite intense and emotional decks, both of them, as you can see from the examples that we're seeing here. So you got the inner child between the 9 of keys this time and the 5 of shells. So the hunger and the possibility. And the inner child is hungry for experiences and everything, and sees, you know, it's hungry for possibilities, it's hungry for something to experience, it's hungry for something to grow and to become, you know, what they need to be, what they need to become. So to grow older, basically. Or lean on me between the healer. Absolutely, when you need healing, lean on me. And the 4 of keys, which is the sanctuary, because if you're hurt, you go through the healing process, but you need to find sanctuary first. If you need to find an area that is safe and sacred and protected and to you. So these two, you can definitely count on these two, reading them together to give you a very intense and powerful experience, finding your niche, finding your witness, accepting it, finding the way in which you are unique, between the Maga of Cups and the 10 of Keys, so between the poet and the burnout. Don't do it too hard, because then you will experience burnout. Perhaps you're not meant to be the small fish in the big pond, you're supposed to be the big fish in the small pond, which is a very niche area of poetry, perhaps. So you see how these two connect with each other so well, that each and every turn of me flipping the cards, you can definitely look at the narrative, you can form the story. So we got one of a kind between the universe and an alliance, or we've got into temptation between the coven of the 3 of Cups and the Crown of Knives, where you want to step away from that team because you feel that's a temptation. Maybe I'm good by myself, you know, and it's an amazing pairing. It works really, really well. Now, when it comes to the aesthetics, I don't mind that we're looking at black and white, or almost kind of a cyanotype in the Circle of Doors tarot, whereas we have a much richer kind of color palette in the Oracle deck. I don't mind that, as I said. I believe that when you do see this kind of resonance in the cards, it's a match that it's meant to be done. So it doesn't matter that they don't correspond when it comes to the color palette. But let me know what you think in the comments below. This was the last pairing for today. It's a very long video, I'm sorry about that. But I do like my pairings, and you know, I do both share my pairings both on Instagram and on YouTube, and I hope you appreciate that. So thanks so much for staying with me till the end of this video. Have a nice day.